To go over briefly with you, you guys should have your data tables already filled out. You collected your data and you also converted the degrees Celsius that you recorded from the thermometers to Fahrenheit. You don't need to put the little degrees symbol and the Celsius symbol here in your data table. It just makes things messy, and it looks better if we can just look up here at your titles and see that anything that comes before this / is in degrees Celsius, and anything comes afterwards is degrees Fahrenheit. And remember, I just had you guys do this so that you could have some perspective on what the temperature was of the sand and the water that you were recording. Since we don't use the metric system in the United States, thinking about 17 degrees Celsius is a little bit abstract for us. So just to give you guys perspective, 17 degrees Celsius is about 62.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, let's move on and take a look at the rest of the assignment. So you guys should already have your analysis questions complete. We did this last class. Those of you that are going to be graphic designers or already do graphic designers, you're familiar with this lorem ipsum text. This is just placeholder text. It's just gibberish. Well, Latin. So this just is taking the place of what you guys actually wrote as thoughtful, complete sentences as answers. Now we're on to graphing our results. So let's check the directions. Use Google Sheets to create 2 digital graphs. Graph number 1, we're going to show what happened to the temperature of the water and the sand when placed in the sun for 15 minutes. In graph number 2, we're going to show what happened to the temperature of the water and sand when we moved it from the sun into the shade. And remember, we were in the shade for 15 minutes as well. Some of you, this might be opposite in terms of the sequence. You may have started outside in the shade and then moved into the sun. That's okay. You're still going to have graph number 1 be the sun or under the heat lamp, if that's where you were, and graph number 2 is going to be in the shade. So we're going to copy and paste our graphs, and I'll explain to you what this means when we paste our graphs into this document, but we're going to link it to the spreadsheet. We're going to do this in the space I've provided below. So graph number 1 is going to go into this box, and graph number 2 is going to go into this box. And I also say here, if necessary, resize your graphs to fit the tables provided on the next page. So if you paste your graph inside of here and it's hanging out of the table, or it expands the table to take up 3 pages, you need to resize it. You need to figure out how to do that. I also say here that you need to customize your graphs to meet the components specified in Sultan. So even though you're going to have the computer digitally, spit out this graph for you, you still have to go in and customize it to make sure that it includes all of the components and that everything is labeled correctly. Now that I have my table copied, I'm going to open up a new tab by either hitting Command T as a keyboard shortcut, or I can go up here and hit the plus sign. And I'm going to open up my Google Drive by going to drive.google.com. And I'm going to open up a new Google Sheet document. New Google Sheet. Here we go. I'm going to click up here in the very first cell, so cell A1, and I'm going to paste the table that I just copied. So again, you can use a keyboard shortcut, Command V or Control V if you're on a PC, or you can go up here to Edit and Paste. Here's my table, and I have a lot of data in here, but I know that I'm going to create 2 digital graphs. One is going to be all of this data from when we had our materials in the sunny area, and then another graph with all of the data from when we were in the shady area. I know some of you guys are going to kill me about this, but what I want you to do before you create your graphs is I want you to delete the degrees Fahrenheit data in this table. It's really simple. Click on the cell, go up here to this function bar, select what you want to delete, and hit delete. And it's actually pretty quick to just go through and do this individually. The reason I want you to delete this is because when you go to make your graph, you're going to be selecting this data. And if you have a bunch of characters in here, like forward slashes and 2 sets of numbers, it's going to make your graph wrong, and it's going to make it messy and busy, and we don't want that. So just for your graphs, we are only going to represent degrees Celsius. But at least you have perspective now. You can always refer back to your data table on the assignment as well and see what each of these Celsius readings is in Fahrenheit, just in case you need to reference that. All right, so I'm almost done here with deleting my degrees Fahrenheit. Boom. So here's my table. I have degrees Celsius. I have the temperature of the water, the sand, sunny area, water, sand, shady area. First, I'm going to go double check. Which one am I going to make first? So I'm going to make graph number 1, water and sand in the sun. Go back to my spreadsheet, and I'm going to select all of the information that I need to create my graph. What I need is the time, the temperature in degrees Celsius of both the water and the sand. I also need the information about the sunny area, and we'll see how it looks when we go to insert our chart. So it's all selected, and I go to insert, chart. Very nice little chart pops out for me. I do want a line chart. I can change these and just kind of like see what happens if I choose different graphs and different charts, but for this particular data, you want to have a line chart. So I'm good there. And again, if you want to go in here and kind of like see what happens when you click different buttons, you know, you can always unclick them if it doesn't turn out the way you need it to. So let's see, what did I do here? Ugh. All right, so I ran into a problem. I don't know how to get back. What I am going to do, though, is I'm going to hit the back button. So you can go up here, and you can hit the back button until you get back to the graph that looks right. And there we go. So this is the graph I want. Right over here next to the graph, I'm going to write Sultan, or type Sultan, rather. And I'm going to use this to help me make sure that I have all of the correct information I need. Uh-oh, I lost my customization toolbar. Well, whenever you see these 3 little dots here, there's like some up here, that means that there's going to be a menu that expands when you click on it. So click here, and you can see if I hit edit chart, then I get that chart editor back. So on my data tab, I'm all good. I'm going to go over to customize, and the only way you can get really good at making your digital graphs is if you open up each one of these things. This little arrow, whenever you see one of these things, means it's going to have an expanding menu as well. Clicking around on these and just kind of seeing what happens when you click on them. So if I click on this, what happens? I don't really notice anything. Don't notice anything. Well, that's not good, obviously, so I'm going to unclick that. And again, don't really notice anything. I don't want to change the background color, because if I do, then my graph is going to be super busy. It's not very neat. It's going to be difficult to read, and I don't want it to be difficult to read for people. I want people to easily be able to read what my data has to show. So I'm going to go back, and I think it was a white background. Yeah, I'm going to leave it as a white background. I'm not going to go in here and change the font to a bunch of different things either, because I want my font to be easy to read for everybody. The next tab I'm going to click on, Chart and Axis Titles. You'll also notice that in some of these menus that expand, there are more menus that expand. This one in particular has a chart title, a chart subtitle, a horizontal axis title, and a vertical axis title. If I'm looking at my graph right now, like if I'm just going down Sultan, my scale actually looks really good. Starts at 0, goes to 25. These are all automatically spaced apart evenly. And that's one really, really super great thing about graphing on the computer, is that it figures all that stuff out for you for the most part. So my S, so my scale, is totally great. I'm going to highlight that and just remind myself that I've already checked that off and I don't need to check it again. I lost my customization toolbar, so I'm going to go back out here, customize, back to chart and axis title. I need to change my title. I told you last semester, and you have a bunch of notes on this, that you have to follow a specific recipe for your graph titles. Your graph titles should always be in the form of the independent variable, or the effect of the independent variable on the dependent variable. And of course, you name what the independent and dependent variables are. Your independent variable is always on the horizontal axis, so on the x-axis. And your dependent variable is always on the y-axis, which is this vertical axis. That's because this information down here, so the amount of time that goes by, affects the temperature of the sand and the water. So the sand and the water temperature is dependent on the amount of time that you're either standing in the shade or that you're standing in the sun. So here I have the correct information, so I have the numbers, but the labels are not correct. And again, also our title is not correct either, but we're going to get back to it. So I can't really do units until I have all of my labels on here. So I'm going to go to label. Go back to my customization, and I'm going to find my vertical axis. So I'm going to look at this axis here, the vertical axis. Click here, and I can type in a title. What do I want my vertical axis title to be? Well, that over there is temperature, and I need to say temperature, but I also need to add units. I can't just say temperature, because if I say temperature, then people aren't going to know if I'm talking about temperature in degrees Celsius or in degrees Fahrenheit or even Kelvin. So the way we do units is we put them in parentheses, and a lot of you guys were having trouble finding the degrees symbol. This is what I would do. I go back to my Land versus Water handout, and I would just copy. And so I'd select the degrees Celsius, I'd copy it, and I'd paste it right in here. And close the parentheses, there I go. So here on my vertical axis, temperature in degrees Celsius, perf. But I'm not done with my labels, right? I got to go back to my horizontal axis title. Sunny area per time in minutes is not correct. What I need to do is delete this sunny area, and I have time, which is my label, and minutes is my are my units. So that looks good. So my label for my axes look correct. Now I need to go back and fix my title. So I'm going to highlight this yellow to cross it off, and now I'm going to go to my title. So for my title, I have to have the effect of the independent variable on the dependent variable. Chart title. Delete all this, I don't need it. Remember, for titles, you capitalize the first letter of all of your big words. So this is going to be the effect of time on the temperature of water and sand exposed to direct, sorry, I forgot to capitalize, exposed to direct sunlight. Boom, there we go. I don't put units up here because all of the information that I need is included already. I'm not going to change the font. I'm not going to change the font size. I'm just going to leave all of this stuff as auto. Let me look at series. What do I need to do here? Left axis, right axis. Ooh, I don't like that. I'm going to go back to left axis. Line thickness. I don't want to do that. I mean, you could if you wanted to just maybe increase it a little bit. Point size. Point size. What does that do? Ew, that's ugly. I'm going to go back to none. Error bars, too much. Data labels, too much. Trend line, I don't need it. But see what happened when I fiddled around with all this stuff over here? This went back to a 10-point size. I want to go back to none so that I don't have any dots on here. All right, I think I'm good there. Chart axis and title. Looks good. Series looked good. Legend. I don't think we need to mess with this. If I start hitting all of these buttons, then all of our data and our labels all get messed up. So I'm going to go back to auto. Don't need to change that. I think legend is good. Horizontal axis. I don't think I need to change anything there. And this is where we would look at our axis. So is it labeled correctly? Is our horizontal axis including the independent variable and hopefully not accidentally the dependent variable? So this is where you're checking your axes to make sure that they are labeled correctly and that the correct variable is on each. And yes, we're good here. Oh, one thing I just noticed is just to keep things streamline here, I'm going to only capitalize the first letter of my label. And I can't forget to go back and highlight my T to cross it off because remember I changed my title, it's already great. I also have units. Do I have units? Let me see. Minutes and degrees Celsius. Yes, I'm good on my units. Now, if you want to go back here just to make sure that you have clicked on all of these, if you want to check out to see what happens when you click on these things, you may, but remember you can always hit the back button. Where is it? Up here, if you need to go back and you've messed something up and you can't figure out how to fix it. I think I'm pretty good. The last thing I'm going to look at here is this thing neat? Is it easy to read? Does it make sense? Is the text the right color? Is the background a light color so that everybody can see and read the information that's on here? And I think it's great. So I'm going to also cross off the neatness part. So great. This is my graph number 1. I'm going to click on it. I want to click on it so that the outside bounding box is selected only. I'm going to go to Edit, Copy. And it deselects the graph. It's fine. It copied your graph. Now you're going to go back to your lab handout, scroll down to where graph number 1 is to be pasted, click inside the box, and paste. And here's what I was talking about before. You want to link it to the spreadsheet. That means if you end up changing anything on that spreadsheet last minute, it'll automatically change in here in the document too. I'll show you what that looks like. So I pasted it. It looks pretty good. It looks centered, and this is the linked to chart. So just to show you what that looks like, if I go back over here and just like test it out, blah, 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 right? And then I go back to my land versus water update. So it automatically links it, so I don't have to keep going back and forth and changing 2 separate graphs. So I don't want that to stay like that, so I'm going to hit my back button. And I'm going to go back to my document, and I'm going to hit on man, what the heck? I don't want to do that either. Okay, sometimes you just have to refresh. When in doubt, refresh your browser. So that's what I did. I just went up here and refreshed my browser. Graph number 1, boom, done. And do the same thing for graph number 2. But I'm not going to delete this because remember, it's linked to my other graph in my the assignment that I'm going to submit. I'm going to unhighlight this so that I can redo with my new data. Same thing. I'm going to select the data. I'm going to go up to Insert, Chart, boom, there it is. Move it over here close to my Sultan, and this one I can do pretty quick. So I know that my graph is going to be the effects of time, the temperature of water and sand when placed in shade. Great. My title, I can cross it off. My axes, let's take a look. They're not labeled correctly, although time is in the correct spot. So I'm going to kind of skip this right now. I'm going to go up to Labels, Edit. I'm going to go straight over to Customize. I'm going to go straight to my chart and axis. I'm going to go boom, vertical axis. What do I need to label this? I need to label this in temperature. Remember, I'm going to go copy my degrees Celsius. And there, I think I'm good. Now I need to edit my horizontal axis, or rather my x-axis, and I'm just going to delete this shady area, and I'm going to make the IME lowercase in minutes. Great. Go back here, My axes are labeled correctly. The correct variables are on the correct axes. I'm going to highlight. Boom, done with that. My labels are all labeled correctly, my title, my axes, so I can highlight that. Did I include units here? Yes. I can highlight this as well. Is my scale okay? Yes, my scale is okay. I don't need to change the scale on either one of these axes. If I did though, I'd go over here to customize, I'd go to grid lines, and then I would click on one of these things here and see it changes the scale and the scope of your axes. So I'm going to go back to auto and close, highlight because my scale is great. And is it neat? Yeah, it's beautiful, gorgeous. Highlight. What do I do now? Click, copy, back to my lab, and paste, link to spreadsheet. There it is. And actually, it looks like maybe Google Documents has updated their applications because it used to not stay in the bounding box. So it looks like now these resize to fit in here perfectly. And then you guys are going to go, you have a submit button up here. As soon as you're done, you're going to submit it. It's going to be sent to me on Schoology, and I'll grade it as soon as possible. Thanks, guys, for your patience, and good luck.